Just okay. So welcome everyone to our Delphic Games event. As you know, I'm the educational coordinator for this project, which is an attempt to rebuild the Delphic Games. It was refounded in 1994, mainly run by a guy in Berlin called Christian Kirsch, who probably won't come because he's more of a patron of the arts. He's not really an artist himself. And I want this meeting every other month to be mainly for practicing artists, musicians, that kind of thing, so that we start getting. Well, I think the international art world should be excited about this project. I knew about it way back in the 90s, and I wrote to Christian recently, about a year ago, and discovered, yes, it's still going. So I got excited, and he said, well, look, you ought to be educational coordinator, you know. The project is to get schools, universities, colleges, everyone interested, art schools. Like if you live in a town which has a famous art school, like in Glasgow, there's the Macintosh, you know, art thing. So they ought to know about this. Their students should submit work. They can join us in 2 months' time. This event will happen every 2 months. We're just a seed group. And if you live in, I don't know, Portland, and you've got an art school or music college or something, then tell them. It's not just for the high and mighty famous Damien Hirst types, you know, who already have their millions. This is for the young, struggling artist who's living in a garret somewhere, just about to publish their famous book of poems and then commit suicide. You know, we want the next level of great poets and artists to step forward. And we want to give them the feeling that there's an Olympic Games for them too. Because we're sick of the sports people getting all the privileges on the planet. It's the macho, I'm bigger than you, I'm faster, I'm stronger kind of attitude that's got us into this problem of a screwed up world, to put it in plain English. So we're fighting back and saying, no, European culture stands for the arts, for music, for poetry, for dance, for theatre. We invented a lot of this stuff. We were the pioneers, especially in ancient Greece and in the Celtic world and the Roman world and the Slavic and the Italian and all that. So let's celebrate our culture. And Delphi is the center for this. Hands up who's been to Delphi as a place on pilgrimage. Gosh, I'm the only one. Okay. Well, I hope that changes. And I hope when we have the Delphic Games in Delphi, that you'll all come and you know, many others. It is to die for. I went as a young man when I was 26 on a spiritual pilgrimage, and it just takes the breath away. It's so beautiful. I can tell you more about it if you're interested. That's why I'm committed to this project. And okay, so there we are. That's me. I'm a philosopher and historian and poet, actually. And I'll be reading some of my poems later. Right, let's go round. Rosalba, why don't you go next?
I present myself?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I am a member of a Druid community in North Italy, and I participate in this Delphi Games with a poem and also a film, if I am able to share the screen. My intention is to make known, to participate with my music. I am a member of a Celtic group, and I'd like to show a song that is very important for me, because for many reasons. First of all, because when we recorded this song, Giancarlo was still with us. Giancarlo was a big referent for us. It was a Druid. It was our guide. And then because also is a song that spoke about a poem, a very ancient poem. The refrain is an ancient magical evocation. The origin is lost in the mist of time. And the song is sung and represent like a mantra and say, every time that two or more Shana is a member of the ancient Druid Shan community. Every time the two or more Shana reunite in a circle, they may ask whatever for them and humanity. It's a very pagan song, so I hope to show to you.
No, we'll come to that in a minute when we start the presentation. But thank you very much, Rosalba. And Rosalba's been taking part in the European Druid Council that I've set up.
Yes.
And you were recently in Geneva, weren't you, for the
yes.
the UN during the International Peace Day?
Yes.
So Rosalba's very active in peace work. I should say the Delphic Games are conceived as a peace games.
Yes.
And countries wouldn't be able to participate if they were engaged in war at the time. That was true in the ancient world. In Delphi, you couldn't go to the Delphic Games if you were from a city-state like Athens or Sparta that was at war. You weren't allowed, and no weapons are allowed in Delphi. So it was, and for the entire duration of the games, which was 10 days or something, there had to be peace for you to be able to participate. And we're going to petition the UN when it's formally approved at the UN level that it will be an international truce during the duration of the Delphic Games. So yeah, the peace, that's why I'm involved in it. You know, it's a peace initiative, really. Okay, thank you. Morag, why don't we hear from you? Just introduce yourself, tell us who you are and all that.
Hi everyone, it's here just now. I'm Morag from Scotland, and I have been involved with the arts my entire life, literally my whole life from babyhood. I grew up in theatres, I could sing before I could walk, I was a dancer when I was younger, I used to play the pipes, it's like I had about 5 instruments on the go all at once during schools. I used to teach theatre as well as dance. I used to perform Egyptian belly dancing as well as Highland. I used to teach Highland country dancing, and I also competed at competition level for Scottish Highland dancing. Things like the sword dance, Highland fling, those kind of traditional dances. Sang many choirs, including the Gaelic choir, and competition in Scotland. It's called the Mod, which is a Gaelic competition, and it's all done in our native language. And there's songs and dances and choirs and solo artists and all sorts of things, and it happens every year. Next year will be in, well, the next time it should have been was in Inverness, but it's not been at the moment because of COVID. They're hoping to restart it, so the next one's due in Inverness. I still sing with a choir with Scottish Opera, so still involved with Scottish Opera. Still have contacts with the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama in Glasgow, but it's now the Conservatoire of Scotland, the Scottish Conservatoire, as I'm an extra of theirs, of Mona, where I used to do drama with them, and still volunteer with festivals and theatres and all sorts of things.
Right, brilliant. And you're speaking from just near Glasgow, aren't you? Loch Lomond way?
Yes, it's only just down the road. Glasgow is 38 miles from me.
Yeah, sure. Good. Okay, welcome, Morag. And you'll be doing some performances later, I hope, when we start.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to be doing a song in my native Gaelic, and a poem of Robert Burns, who's world renowned.
Okay, superb. Thank you. Samantha, go for it. Hello.
Hello, everybody. I am currently located in Portland, Oregon in the USA. My background is more intellectually based, but recently, probably within the last year and a half, I have been on a very deep spiritual journey, really seeking the depth of my relationship with the divine and the divinity within me and within all. And through that process and through that journey, I have really explored my creativity. It's sort of just come out as an outcrop. And so I've been very deeply into poetry recently. And if able, I would love to share some of it. I do have to leave this meeting a little bit early. but if I do have the chance, I would love to share some of my poetry.
Excellent. No, we're going to go around each one performing a turn. So welcome, Samantha. Thank you. And I did invite Mandy Khan to join us. I hope she could read some poems, but what time is it there on the West Coast?
It is 9:14 in the morning.
Yeah. Maybe Mandy's still getting up and getting the coffee ready. So I expect people will join us a bit later. Right. Okay. So look, I'm gonna kickstart the meeting with. I'm going to do a quote from a guy called Plutarch. Right. Some of you probably heard of Plutarch. He was a classical scholar, and the reason I'm starting with Plutarch is because he was the master or the director, I don't know what the term was in Greek, of the Delphic Games in about 130, 40, 50 AD. He was a priest of Delphi. He's a very interesting character called Plutarch. He spoke Greek. Obviously, he was a native Greek from Boeotia, which a town not far from Delphi. Obviously, he's a historical character. But what was unusual about him is he also learned Latin and went to Rome and visited Italy. He went to the north of Italy, and he had lots of Roman friends as well, intellectuals, poets, philosophers. And he wrote a very famous book called The Parallel Lives. I'm going to quote a bit from it later, in which he took the lives of firstly a famous Greek person, like say Theseus, the great first king of Athens, and then he contrasted it with a famous Roman, so Romulus, the founder of Rome, And he wrote this amazing book, which has survived. It was copied by Christian monks, and it survived in the abbeys of Europe. And it's been translated into French and English, and it's a classic in its own right. And there's an awful lot of detail that we can learn from this book that we don't learn from other sources, which is why he's so interesting. I'm going to quote from the book a bit later on, but I want to start with just a little quote from a study of Plutarch, which is, I think, really interesting. I like a good student, I read the whole thing recently, and because he was the general secretary at the Delphic Games, he's our kind of line manager, really. We should respect Plutarch. So here's what he said about his parallel lives. These are the words of Plutarch, right? I am not engaged in writing history, but lives. It is not in the most conspicuous of a man's acts that good and bad qualities are necessarily best manifested. Some trivial act, a word, a jest, often shows up character far more than engagements with thousands of dead or pitched battles or blockades. Painters get their resemblances of portrait with subject from the face and the parts round the eyes. That is where character shines out. And so they pay little regard to the rest of the body. In the same way, we must be allowed to penetrate into the manifestations of the soul, and by their aid to create a picture of each individual life, leaving to others all the great exploits and the struggles. So that's just my first reading, a quote from Plutarch about. It shows you he was quite a genius, actually. And we should remember the Delphic Games had poetry, music, theatre, dance, and painting, were exhibited. So all the great artists of Greece from about 600 BC to about 400 AD used to participate. So it was going for 1,000 years. Right, okay, that's my first go. Kacheni, welcome.
Thank you. Greetings to you, Thomas.
Yeah. So do introduce yourself. We've been round, and then we're going to take turns doing a reading. I think you've got some poems for us. Yeah. Introduce yourself first. Okay.
Okay, so my name is Katyayani, and my name is Katyayani Singh, and I teach political science at Jagran University, Bhopal. I have done my PhD thesis on non-killing and global peace. And apart from that, I'm also interested in writing poems, and a lot of it I have written on my blog, as well as some philosophical perspectives also I keep posting on my blogs. So yes, that's it. Just
Okay. And are your poems in English or Hindi or what?
most of the poems are in English. A few of them, one or two probably I have written in Hindi. Yeah, that's one part of creativity, and another aspect which I do as an artist, you can say, is I also happen to sing sometimes.
Ah,
Just,
we might get a song from you before you go. That'd be fun. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, you just missed me reading about Plutarch, but that's all right.
okay.
Right. We'll get a poem from you shortly. Rosalba, would you like to share your first? Just do one of your contributions to begin with.
Yes, I'd like to share a video that, as I told, show one of our songs of our Labgral Celtic group. I hope to be able to share the video.
Yes, you should be able to. I've made it so you can.
Okay.
Ah.
Okay.
Every time the two shall reunite in a circle round, I hate to sing a shiny present on them. Every time the two shall reunite in a circle, they may ask whatever for the main humanity. Wake up, man, death waits for you. In the sky, the sun is no high. Wake up, man, the time has come to Mashana reunites in a circle. They may ask whatever for them and humanity. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, round a hate the same Mashana plays a harm on them. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, they may ask whatever for them and humanity. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, round a hate the same Mashana plays a harm on them. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, they may ask whatever for them and humanity. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, round a hate the same Mashana plays a harm on them. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, they may ask whatever for them and humanity. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, round a hate the same Mashana plays a harm on them. Every time the two Mashana reunites in a circle, they may ask whatever for them and humanity.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow. Round of applause for that.
Thank
That
you
was
very much.
wonderful. Do you want to tell us a bit about when was that shot? Who was in it? Obviously, you were singing. Who else? When was it done, Rosalba?
Sorry?
When was that filmed?
5 years ago. 5 years ago,
Mm.
I think. Yes.
It's very impressive. We loved it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to your work later.
Okay.
Right. Kacheni, would you like to read us a poem of yours now? Because I know it's really late for her. It's like about midnight. What time is it there? You'll need to unmute.
It's 11 o'clock.
Oh, that's not too bad. Okay. Still, go for a poem, because I know you go to bed early in India, don't you?
Yes. So I think this is the latest of my poem, which I wrote as my, I can say, my thank you for all my teachers. So the title of the poem reads, Lights in Our Lives. Into this world when we enter, we take different paths to venture. But it is only with a mentor that we reach to the peak's center. My family nurtured me to create a better me. My teachers enlightened my path to see the important that had been forgotten in the life's sea. While my friends taught me that it is okay to be carefree. My family, friends, and teachers are my light that glowed in the dark when I had lost all my might. They taught me how to fight, and I fought the world without a fright. That's. I hope you heard it.
Okay. Yeah, no, we could follow that. Thank you very much. Yes, it's got some combative metaphor in the end, fighting, because it's ironic. Kacheni is a peace researcher, but she's named after the goddess of war, I believe. Kacheni was a pretty ferocious deity. So, am I right in saying you're named after a war goddess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we see that coming through in the poem. Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm going to do another reading about Plutarch, because I've got lots saved up. This is from a very interesting writing he did. He wrote, as well as the lives, he wrote a series of dialogues modeled on Plato, which were a group of people discussing, like we're doing, 4 or 5 or 6 people would come together and discuss. And then he would write it down and publish it on scrolls as a dialogue. And they discussed many, many topics. And we know a lot about the ancient world because of his writings on this. One of the most interesting of the topics they discussed was the nature of daemons. In Greek, they're spelt Daemons. Now, we call them demons in English, but we don't, most people that talk about demons haven't got a clue what they're talking about. In Greek philosophy, there was a big discussion about what daimons are. And I'm going to read what Plato said they were in the Symposium. Plutarch quotes this in his writing. And this was put in the mouth of Diotima, who was a woman philosopher, a priestess, who taught Socrates. Right, so this has got very good academic credentials. All that is daimonic lies between the mortal and the immortal. Its functions are to interpret to men communications from the gods, commandments and favors from the gods for men's attention, and to convey prayers and offerings from men to the gods. Being thus between men and gods, the daimons fill up the gap and so acts as a link joining up the whole. Through it, as intermediary, pass all forms of divination, all the technique of the priests, sacrifices, spells, and divination, and sorcery, and magic. God does not mix direct with man. The daimonic is the agency through which intercourse and converse takes place between men and gods, whether in waking visions or in dreams. Now that's, it's quite a heavy topic, right? Like we're saying, are there spirits? Are there like demigods? Are there daimons? So Plutarch, I mean, you can see he's a deep thinker, right? Plutarch gets together a discussion group of his friends and they discuss a topic called On the Failure of the Oracles. Now, just think about this. Plutarch is priest of Delphi. Delphi, for 1,000 years, was the most famous oracle probably in the world. People would go there to consult the priestesses who would transmit a message through the demons from the gods. Some matters of very important statehood, like should Britain do Brexit? If we were living in ancient times, we would have sent to the oracle at Delphi. We would have been told no, by the way. So what they have is a discussion group called On the Failure of the Oracles, discussing why the oracles aren't working anymore. They don't seem to be getting enough messages. And so this is a summary of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the participants, Cleombrotus, isn't sure whether the first idea of daemons came from Zoroaster and the Magi, or from Thrace and Orpheus, or was it from Egypt or maybe Phrygia? Among the Greeks, he points out that Homer, and particularly Hesiod, said there were 4 classes of reasonable beings: gods, daemons, heroes, and human beings. There can be an upward ascent so that a man can become a hero, and then a daemon, and then a god. A daemon may, however, also lapse and become a man again. After some period not clearly defined, a daemon may die. Cleombrotus is cautious about speaking of the mysteries, but he is clear that official days of mourning and sacrifice, with wailings and so on, are the work of daemons and not of gods. In the same way, the stories about the wandering of gods, their banishment and enslavement and crimes, may be sung in hymns and legends, but actually were the experience of daemons and not gods. And he doesn't even spare Delphi. The story of the struggle between Apollo and the serpent Typhon for the possession of the oracle, he says, is absurd and unworthy of the god. the main object of his outburst is to urge that oracles and prophecies are in the hands of daemons, and when oracles fail, it is because the daemon has deserted the shrine. So anyway, there's a little glimpse of Plutarch. You know, he was a priest at Delphi with this great oracle, and he doesn't really know what daemons are. He wants to know where oracles come from. You know, this is something that you could discuss in a philosophy seminar now at the University of Milan or London. And I've often taught, you know, there's so much we don't know still. Right, okay, that's enough. Samantha, why don't you do us a poem, please?
Let's see. All right. I'm just uploading it here. Sorry, I should have had this prepared. Okay, here it is. This is called In Thine Image. As the curtains part and divide, an orchestra sounds in a tune perfected. The majesty expands far and invites its image uniquely reflected. The energy throughout the theater comes alive in heavenly praise. This beautiful rendition shows practice of syncing vibrations harmonious in plays. The composition is titled I Am, and its quality is of love and light. All receive a free ticket to the performance in which stars unite.
Can you tell us a little bit about the poem? I mean, it's an allegory about life, is it? The performance is us.
Yes, the performance as a whole is the divine vibration of I am, and we are all unique reflections of the one vibration, the divine within all of us. So as energy that is in fractals, we're all a reflection of the same thing. And so we go individually, we go through the same process that the divine goes through. And so this poem is just applied to the divine as a whole and to us as unique individuals.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like the way the you know, the meaning shifts at the end, because it starts, you think you're watching an orchestra, and you know, you get ready for that, and then the whole meaning shifts to another level. So that's great. Thank you. Right, okay, let's have a poem from Morag, or your song, whichever you want to do.
I thought I'd do a wee very short poem that my dad actually wrote. He used to enjoy watching me paint, and there was one day he just decided to write a poem about artists on the spur of the moment. One day he was watching me. So it says, to see the efforts folk will make to place an image on the page, to see the pains that they will take, to see their pleasure or their rage, reminds us that the artist's task is to portray the inner soul, and not to seek in fame to task, but tender truth is all their goal.
Yes, and tell us a bit about your dad, because I met him, but these people haven't. He was quite a character, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He led quite a life. He started off, he was training to be a priest, but his father passed away, so he had to leave the seminar when he was 16, because back in those days you could go to the college from 12 years old in train up at the college in Blair's College in Aberdeen. And then once you became of age at 18, you left the college and then went to Rome to study there. But he left before that happened. He left at 16, where he joined the Forestry Commission, and then BBC and STV, where he became an actor, singer. He always loved poetry. He was fluent in Latin, so he was a lifelong scholar. And that's where I eventually got it from, because he was a professional singer and scholar and actor. And
he later became...
he went back to his very first love, and it's like he took holy orders late in life, and he passed away a bishop in the church, archbishop.
Yeah. So he was quite a character. I met him when we went to hear the Pope speaking in Glasgow at a papal mass, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Small world. Right. Okay. Excellent. Let me do a poem then, since we're doing poems. I brought some of mine. I published 6 volumes in total. And I regard myself as a poet as much as a philosopher or teacher. This is poem 474. I've numbered mine. I've got to 1,000. This is called Bacchus's Lament. Bacchus being the god Dionysus, or the god of, Dionysian revelry. This was written in about year 2006. I walked through walls to escape, and nobody noticed. I was talking with the dead, hearing their stories, what they had to offer in the ways of wisdom. But nobody listened, only the dead. I was healing the sick with a miracle cure, simple as patience, lying still enough for grace to settle. But the fates kept blowing on us, and it didn't settle long. I was making up symphonies in my head that never got written down. But they're still playing somewhere, even better than before. I was planting trees with my mind as I went along, a secret agent for the creative. But very few people asked, where did that come from? I was planting cities long, long ago, deepening the foundations with a plough, where the paths of wandering beasts meet, and there's a good story to dig down on. But the people who come now to the forum in ruins, and the people long buried and scattered in ash beneath them, how to connect their seeings, how to connect their stories into something that adds up over the longest view. Right. Okay. Thank you. Rosalba, have you got another poem for us this time?
Yes. If I can read a poem by Giancarlo, I'd like to share with you, because this is significant, because this is the poem with which my musical group opened the Olympic Games of Turin in 2006. We opened the concert with this poem by Giancarlo in front of 9,000 people. And I read, Our Ancient Art by Giancarlo Barbadoro. To return to our sacred lands, to live our love, our freedom, our right to find answers, to live the ancient soul of the people of the earth, to live again the ancient traditions, to make our ancient heart beat again.
Tell us about these Olympic Games in Turin. Were they the Olympic Games? Was it the winter ones or what?
The Winter Olympic Games, yes. It was in 2006, and we opened the Olympic Games with our concert. It's very strange because it was after the Twin Tower, no, you remember?
Yeah, yeah.
And we have some people policy that control all. It was very stressing.
Sure, like yeah. Well, artists are the okay, we're not terrorists. I've coined the word joyists. We're the joyists of the world, which is the opposite of terrorists. We're trying to build things instead of knock them down. So, you know, it's us, the joyists, against the kind of crazy people that want to destroy things. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Caccini, let's have another poem of yours if you can.
Okay, so just let me see. Okay, so this is another poem which is about soulful peace or inner peace. It starts with, be afraid of the silence, not from the resistance. Be wary of the passive acceptance, not of the emotional resilience. For silence precedes the storm, while resistance is put for any blind no. Passive acceptance does not mean to conform, and emotional resilience reflects the soul's perfected form. Someday the silent one will fight the sins that are stark. The passive acceptor will confront the acts which are dark. Together they would defy the orthodoxy and set a benchmark, and shall bring peace but with a spark. They would fight not to appease, neither to please or to displease the human whim, but to seize the evil that defiles the soul's peace. That's the end.
It's a complex poem. Yeah, I like
it. It's a bit philosophical.
Yeah, I think we have to see that. Yeah. No, I like it. And I can see again, the poem is about your own struggles between, you know, peace, pacifism, violence, non-violence. This has been your soul quest for many years, you know. And,
yes.
And for many millions of people on the planet, you know, like at what point is it okay to fight, if ever, against invasion or evil and so on? I mean, Plutarch was friends of many soldiers, and Greece had been conquered by Rome at the time. He kind of accepted that. And a lot of the famous lives he writes are about famous, you know, soldiers, warriors, generals, and all that. And am I right in thinking the head of the Indian Armed Forces just died in a helicopter crash?
Yes, just 2-3 days back. He passed away along with 13 or 14 more soldiers that were present in that helicopter.
Including his wife and family as well, wasn't it?
Only his wife was there. They were going, I think his wife was going with him to give a lecture in some college.
Is there any suspicion that it was foul play, or is it just an accident?
Yes, there is a suspicion that probably there was some cyber interference with the helicopter. But it's still on investigation. It's still not anything is not being said by the government as such, but news is there.
Right, tragic. So we're in the middle of a crazy world, and the head of the entire Army, Navy, and Air Force of India just fell down in a helicopter. For those that don't know. Okay, I'm going to read next a little sequence, talking of generals. I'm going to read from Plutarch's Parallel Lives. What's extraordinary, you've got to think this guy was writing in the day before printing, publishing, electricity. He's working from an oil lamp at night. He's writing on scrolls with a kind of pen, probably made of, you know, a swan's feather or something. They didn't have books, they had just scrolls, right? And yet somehow he can access all this incredible information. We know that Plutarch loved libraries, and he went to Alexandria as a young man, which had the biggest library in the world at the time. And he must have spent many, many happy weeks in the library in Alexandria. And he probably took lots of notes and then smuggled them out. There was no photocopying machines, no scanning, but you would copy by hand, right? Anyway, here is the account of the death of Mark Antony. Mark Antony was a lieutenant, assistant general to Julius Caesar, and his best right-hand man. Together they conquered Gaul, and were quite, tyrannical. But when Caesar became the ruler of Rome, like a dictator, almost a king, Mark Antony was his right-hand man. When Caesar died, he was assassinated by Republicans who didn't want a king. Mark Antony sort of said, well, let's go and chase after those people. Let's keep the memory of Caesar alive. And he led let's call it the royalist faction in Rome. But Caesar had left his power and wealth and his title to his nephew, who was called Octavius. And so there was a bit of a conflict. Should Octavius succeed to Caesar's power, or should Antony? Well, to begin with, Antony thought he should. He was a much older man. He was a powerful general. He'd led armies. He'd won battles. He was obviously the guy to step into the shoes. But Octavian was a very skillful diplomat, and he had law on his side because the will had made him the heir. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it's all written up in the life of Antony. And what happened was that Antony eventually, after a period of conciliation with Octavian, during which he married his sister, Octavia, they then parted because Antony fell in love with the pharaoh of Egypt called Cleopatra, who was a beautiful, beautiful woman he totally fell for. And he just acted like a teenage boy in love. He totally lost his mind over her, and his whole life went to pieces. It's a masterpiece of writing, the life of Antony. And it's also about the destructive effects of love that goes out of control. So here we are. Now it's the end scenes. Antony is in Alexandria. Cleopatra is nearby, but Octavian has turned up with a huge army. After this, Antony sent a challenge to Caesar to fight him hand to hand, who made him answer that he might find several other ways to end his life. And he, considering with himself that he could not die more honorably than in battle, resolved to make an effort both by land and sea. At supper, it is said, Antony bade his servants help him freely and pour him out wine plentifully, since tomorrow perhaps they should not do the same, but be servants to a new master, whilst he should lie on the ground a dead corpse and do nothing. His friends that were about him wept to hear him talk so, which he perceiving, told them he would not lead them to a battle in which he expected rather an honorable death than either safety or victory. That night, it is related, about the middle of it, when the whole city was in a deep silence and general sadness, expecting the event of the next day, on a sudden was heard the sound of all sorts of instruments and voices singing in tune, and the cry of a crowd of people shouting and dancing, like a troop of bacchanals on its way. This tumultuous procession seemed to take its course right through the middle of the city of Alexandria, to the gate nearest the enemy. Here it became the loudest and suddenly passed out. People who reflected considered this to signify that Bacchus, the god, whom Antony had always made it his study to copy and imitate, had now forsaken him. Now that's a really interesting passage, a sort of supernatural event that happens on the eve of Antony's defeat, because the next day there's a battle and Antony loses. And the passage is saying that the god Dionysus or Bacchus, who Antony believed, I don't know if he thought he was the incarnation of him, but what we do know from Plutarch is that him and Cleopatra used to play dressing up games. Their erotic love play, he would dress up as Bacchus and she would dress up as Isis. And they would have like themed parties on that in Egypt, So I think he kind of thought he was Bacchus in person. Well, this little tale by Plutarch is like, that's Bacchus leaving his side. And it's quite interesting. And of course, we know that Shakespeare borrowed a lot of this text for his great play, Antony and Cleopatra, which some of you may have seen. It's one of my favorite of his plays. Okay, let's have another poem. Who's going next? Samantha, have you got another one for us?
I do indeed. This one is called Born Again. I crossed a threshold today that had long gone undetected. It met me at a beginning where cycles end connected. There a path continued that I had walked many times before, one beckoning my return, but in which interested me no more. Then, in a matter of seconds, another path appeared. I couldn't see far past the start, but it seemed splendid and cleared. To enter this newfound route, I had to present the magic key. It was not a word alone, but an action to show I was free. At first, I was unsure, for I thought I had arrived unprepared. So I chose to review the cycle which this juncture divinely bared. I witnessed my prior behavior and old patterns of communication. I began perceiving them differently due to a reconstructed foundation. An epiphany came to me too, and I understood how to start anew. The key was to see through the lens of a loving point of view. I showed compassion and forgiveness to experiences that had lacked them both, intending to carry that with me, upon which I unlocked a fresh round of growth.
Okay, right. Another deep metaphysical poem about choices. And yeah, I like it.
Thank you.
It's got little echoes. It's like, I'd call that Robert Frost looking for new paths. It's kind of like Robert Frost's image of the path you don't take, only it doubles back on you. It's sort of that image taken to a more sophisticated level, it seems to me. But thank you. Kacheni, did you what were you saying?
I was mentioning the name of the poem, Stopping by Woods by Robert Frost, which you mentioned.
That poem, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems to me you could pinch a few lines from Robert Frost and sneak them into your poem and make it even more complicated.
I'll have to read his poems. I don't know that I've ever actually read his poems, but I'll
Yeah. That one's on the internet. It's very famous. Stopping by Woods, yeah. You'd like that. Right, I think it's time for Morag to sing us her song in Gaelic. Because we've already had one kind of Druid ballad. Let's have another. Are you ready? You'll have to unmute. Yeah.
As ready as always. I just hope the sound quality will be okay for you guys.
I'm sure.
I didn't pre-record, so I'm going to do it live for you. And in the Gaelic, I'll just do a wee short explanation. In the Gaelic, it's like the older washerwomen and the spinners, etc. They needed that constant rhythm to work to. They needed something steady to work to. So they used to sing very often. It's like something called piarta bail, bail being mouth music, which in today's phrases we call it a cappella. But it's really just having that song so they could have that steady beat to work to, whether it was using their foot for the spinning wheel, or they were washing away, or whatever it was, whatever chore it was they were doing, they sang these songs. You very often see them in older movies as well. You'll see the women, it's like along the shoreline with the fishing, and it's like they're all got their individual jobs, and then it's like one person will start a song in the Gaelic, and then suddenly everybody's doing it, and then it's like they're working away to get that steady rhythm. It's like so they can work that wee bit faster and that wee bit. So the song I'm going to do is called Brochen Laum. Brochem is basically just porridge. So the song's about porridge, and as Thomas will know from living here, it is a very much a stable part of the Scottish diet. It's like for breakfast, for sticking it in everything from bread to biscuits. It's like the Scots put oats in just about everything. But this is about the porridge side of things, the breakfast, and how watery and disgusting that Mum made it. So, Brochenlaum. Brochenlaum, Tanalaum, Brochelum the Zoren, Brochenlaum, Tanalaum, Brochelum the Zor, Brochenlaum, Tanalaum, Brochelum the Zoren, Brochelum, Satanalam, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Tana, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Tana, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Tana, Brochelum the Zor, Brochelum, Satanalam, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Narin, Dingilin, Lissavachazor, Brochen Valen, Dingilin, Lissavachazor, Brochen Narin, Dingilin, Lissavachazor, Brochelum, Satanalam, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Tana, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Tana, Brochelum the Zor, Brochen Tana, Brochelum the Zor, Brochelum, Satanalam, Brochelum the Zor, Brotken the Viren, Botken the Viren, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Viren, Botken the Viren, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Hero, Botken the Hero, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Hero, Botken the Hero, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Viren, Botken the Viren, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Viren, Botken the Viren, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Vichiri, Botken the Vichiri, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Vichiri, Botken the Vichiri, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Viren, Botken the Viren, Bonnie's Grania, Botken the Viren, Botken the Viren, Bonnie's Grania.
Thank you. So is that whilst they're stirring the porridge, they're singing that, or how are they?
It's watery, it's horrible. It's like that's a Brochenlaum, Tanalaum. It's like you're like, come on, get it. And the Scots would use an instrument of a long wooden stick called a spurtle for stirring the porridge rather than a spoon.
Okay.
They wouldn't use a wooden spoon, they'd use a wooden spurtle, which is just a thicker stick. It's like
Right.
to get that nicer consistency. It's like for the thicker porridge.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, no, thank you very much. Bit of so I'm sure we're all fans of Scottish history, and I should just add, Morag is helping with the World Intellectual Forum in Scotland, Intellectuals for Free Scotland, it's called, and we're trying to support the idea of a second referendum, aren't we, Morag? I came to the view that they deserve.
For a free Scotland, fingers crossed.
Yeah, they deserve it because they're a very different culture to the English. It's funny, there's
more and more people moving up here. It's like it's like a mass exodus from England. Everybody's coming up to Scotland before it's too late.
Yeah.
Well, Scotland gets their independence, they're all moving up now.
Yeah, there's no English people on this call. I mean, I have reached out, but I don't think, I mean, in England, they don't seem to care about culture anymore. They're just, it's become obsessed with money and status and power, and, you know, nobody has time for the arts, it seems to me. But, you know, hopefully there's a few poets down south. We'll try and get them here next in a couple of months' time. If you know any poets in England or artists or singers, you know, let me know. I think the only good ones are dead.
I know plenty in Scotland.
Yeah, well then spread the word among them. Okay, let's do that. Right, who's next with a poem? Rosalba, have you got another one for us?
Sorry, you can hear me?
Yes, please. Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Is another poem by Giancarlo. It calls Dreaming. My vision is the gift of the ancestors. In the storms, in the rivers, in the stretch of the lands that reach beyond the horizon, there is my breath, there is my spirit, there is my flowing blood. In the land that fades upon the horizon, my history was given, the history of the ancestor stories that have created my present, in a time that lives on in the vision of the eternal present, and I keep the dreaming.
Thank you.
Thank
Did
you.
he write that in Italian or in English?
Yes, he wrote in Italian, yes.
Have you got the Italian text there? Can you read us in Italian?
Oh,
We'd like to hear how it sounds in its original.
I take, mi servono in italiano, sì. Just a minute.
Sure. I love the look of that bookcase. It looks very exciting. Especially the 4-volume set. What's that? Some kind of encyclopedia. You like it?
Okay. Dreaming. This is Al di là della soglia. I read.
Okay.
Quando mi sono liberato del mio corpo e della mia mente, quando ho avuto accesso al mondo dello spirito, sono stato davanti al mistero che separava la vita dall'eternità. Ho visto l'eternità al di là del diaframma che separa il sogno dalla realtà. Ho conosciuto il cuore del mondo. Ho visto che aveva senso solo quello che era realtà, fuori dal sogno. You can understand Italian?
Only a little bit, a little bit. It depends, you know, how much wine I've had to drink. But thank you. For those that don't know, just tell us who was Giancarlo, who's the author of that? Tell us about his life story.
He lives 2 lives because he had a contact with a Druid community in the country, and he lived 2 lives, because one in the ordinary world, and another one in inside the community, the Druid community. And so he has 2 lives. Like many people, many people, Druid people, also Aboriginal people, also Indian people, they have 2 lives, no? One in the ordinary people, in the ordinary world, and one and another inside a tribal community.
Right. And his poetry came from which life? Which life wrote the poems?
I think the life about is inside the community.
Right, right. And how many poems did he write? Has he left a lot?
A lot of poems. We published when he was sorry, when he died. We published this poem. All the poems, also the other poems that I found in his studios.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
A lot of poems.
And he was your husband for how long? You were married?
40 years.
40 years. Okay.
40 years of project, studies, travel. Imagine.
Sure. Long time. Yeah.
Long time.
Great. Well, bless you. Okay, Kacheni, have you got another poem for us?
Yes, I do have. So this I wrote it way back in 2016. It's titled as Divine Love. Every life has an essence that can be felt through a sense. They move all around the universe, leaving us to think, is it a boon or curse? Boon it is for those who try and spread love. For love is like a sublime dove that gives happiness to its creatures from above. Be the life inside or outside a cow. Those who yield to the divine will glow in the world like the moonshine, mesmerizing the world like a wine, appearing to all people something beyond fine.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I like that. Have you tried writing poetry without rhyming? Or do all your poems have rhymes?
Most of them I try with some certain rhyming scheme, because when I used to read English poetry, we were taught that there are rhyming schemes.
Yeah. I want to let you into a secret as a poet, right? If you break free from the rhymes, you have much more freedom to actually express the thoughts. And I recommend just try writing some poems without the rhymes.
Okay.
And see if you like it, because I used to write when I was 6, 7, 8, rhyming poems. And then I had a really brilliant teacher at school who said, you don't have to rhyme, Thomas. And in modern English poetry, it's very seldom that you rhyme. The great poets of English have given that up now. So I'm just saying, you're writing poetry that's like 100 years out of date. And you don't need to, Anyway, I dare you to try. Okay.
Okay, I'll try.
Here's a poem I'm going to read. It's poem 281. I wrote it in 1997 on April 23rd, and it's called For Shakespeare's Birthday. My English teacher, who taught me how to write poetry and to love poetry at grammar school in Brighton, he was a great Shakespearean scholar, and I used to act in the plays. And I really got to feel the essence of what Shakespeare was about and his soul and all that. And we've been friends ever since. I acted in several of his plays, right? And I love his language. So I'm going to read this poem. It's an homage to Shakespeare. Everything goes missing again and again. Lovers, once held irredeemable as marble, sacred feelings beyond articulation, beyond hearing, within pure mind, ideas about solving the knot of soul. The place where they all end up is silence. Hard to gain access to that kingdom. Mind-only yogacarins, deep down sifters amidst wells and mines and caves, searching for diamonds. Awaken now gently. See them scattered on each leaf. Dew crystals, sunlight's glory. Some things are stolen, forcibly taken. What error is there here? The illusion of mine and yours departing and retrieving into each other, we steal from each other's eyes their depths. Brilliant sparks amidst the black, gaining and losing, foaming in love, crazy with awe, bound to the wheel. Yet if truly one, what endless plots we weave, and why? Cajoling, wheedling, threatening it out, forgetting and surprising ourselves in separate forms. The proud beauties of the breast we suck back to, and the lips of liquid pleasure our souls swim into, as minnows into the whale of being. And the endless circling and recircling as our souls pinion down again and again, parachuting ecstatic pirouettes, recalling glimpses of cosmic glory, stars wheeling and circling overhead, underneath, between, within, and through. Thus, our defensive self, our floating buoyant self, woven from tufts of gossamer down, of star fabric, thistle down, Milky Way, luxuriant and all compassionate. Divine mother, wife, lover, goddess. Divine father, husband, partner, lover, God. Dissolve us. Grant us to live gloriously this brief overshadowing enactment of your cosmic drama. Through our frail forms, solve us through that love within each enactment, each moment of ecstasy reached, each moment of joy stretched forth in faith. Resolve us into soul, resoul us, dissolve us, resolve us through your passionate fury for peace, your jealousy for the real. And at the last, return us to the sea of the great soul, the sea soul, sailing and dipping into the white ocean water of waves, the rhythmic lapping and coiling, the gentle and fierce simultaneous Poseidon dancer, bull roaring, teasing and temptress, sea bearer of foam, stretched out far beneath all the despair, Adonis waiting for redemption and her promised return. Aphrodite's breast daring hell and the flaming corridors of false desire, and yearning to attain that real love, waiting at the judgment seat of life and death. We'll meet there, patient at the pool of images, the lost soul's reuniting apex, the other halves assortment zone, where lovers gaze through glistening eyes wide as halls, where poets recite their craft and bards strum gently on their strings of gold. And the magic of the muses dances and weaves between us, all made new, at peace, resold. Anyway, that was my little homage to Shakespeare. And just a little footnote, there's one verse in that where I talk about the great soul. I discovered the Anglo-Saxon word soul comes from the same root as the word for a wave. In Anglo-Saxon, which is the origin of English, the word for a wave was soul. And that grew into our word soul because intuitively the ancients knew that soul is made of waves. Sometimes it's up, happy, sometimes it's down, sad. The soul is not a static thing. It flows like a waveform, or like light that also moves in waves. I mean, many philosophers say light makes the soul substance, but then light also moves in waves. So I tried to put that idea into the poem. Right, okay. Morag, can we hear your Robbie Burns poem? You were going to do us one of those, weren't you? We're coming up to the end. I think we'll finish at past because we've got another 10 minutes. We can all do one more, say.
The Bard of Scotland.
Yeah.
He's famous the world that everybody knows Auld Lang Syne for New Year's. It's like most people will sing that. But he wasn't just known for his poems, he was known for his songs and hymns and all the rest of it. And this particular poem that I picked is also a song. I don't actually like it as a song.
No.
Because the music goes up and down in the scale, and it's one of those type songs that you go. But as a poem, it's really beautiful. It's lovely words. And Thomas, you'll know this, but it's like when you're in the Highlands and you're in that nature where you're just surrounded by mountains and lochs, and there's something very spiritual and tribal about it that it touches your heart. Especially when you get those rare moments where stags that are called monarchs, they're referred to as monarchs of the glens. It's like come literally right up to you with no fear at all. It's like they will walk right up to you. And I was raised in the Highlands, so this is why I picked this poem. And it's called My Heart's in the Highlands. Farewell to the Highlands, farewell to the North, the birthplace of valour, the country of worth. Wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the Highlands, forever I love. For my heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a chasing the deer, a chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, where'er I go. Farewell to the mountains, high covered with snow. Farewell to the straths and the green valleys below. Farewell to the forests and the wild hanging woods. Farewell to the torrents and loud pouring floods. My heart's in the Highlands, for my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a chasing the deer, a chasing that wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, where'er I go.
Right. Yeah, I know what you meant about that. Once you've spent time in the Highlands, it really is quite hypnotic. Who else has been to the north of Scotland here on this call? Was Alba, did you go?
Yes, I went over there in Inverness, in Nairn, many years. I went each holidays. Highland Games. It was fantastic, the Highland Games.
Okay. Did you go with Giancarlo? Did he go
Yes.
with?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Carlo and the community also.
Okay.
Many
Great.
friends. Yes.
because the music you played earlier had some like
Yeah.
definite Scottish or Irish flavor to it.
Absolutely. Irish, Scottish, Breton. We take, we transform the music that they learn us.
Right, interesting. Yeah, because for those that don't know, when I wrote my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies a couple of years ago, I took a whole year to research it. I discovered that in the north of Italy, where Rosalba lives, there are very ancient Celtic archaeological remains. They found there were Druid sages, tribes there.
Yes.
And what I didn't know is they're still there. That's what's so exciting about.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I
So
hope.
there's still, you know, they weren't. I mean, the Druids, the Celts founded Milan, and they founded Bologna. These were Celtic cities before the Romans came north.
Yes.
You know, they were highly sophisticated people, and
Yeah.
they were friends with the Etruscans, who were also great sages and priests and seers. You know, the Etruscan people. The Romans were just a little village down south that bred warriors.
Yes.
You know, and lawyers and politicians. I mean, didn't have many intellectuals. Right, Kachani, have you got another poem for us?
I think I'm out on those, so it's getting a bit late now.
Okay, you're out of poems.
So-
Okay. Well, let's see if Samantha's probably got one. Thank you for your contribution there, Kachani. We love it.
Thank
But
you.
do take my advice and try the free verse style. It liberates the soul, you see.
Yes, I will definitely.
Excellent, good. Samantha, have you got another one for us?
I do. Before I read this, I just want to comment really quickly, Thomas. I also write in rhyming lyrics, and I've never ventured outside of that. I'm also going to take your dare. But I will say that I love rhyming. Love it.
I mean, it's wonderful too. I mean, when you have people like Jeremiah Hopkins and Dylan Thomas, you know, you can write brilliant poetry that rhymes. But I think it was T.S. Eliot that taught me that you don't have to rhyme to be a great poet.
To each
But anyway,
his own.
I'm sure you'll be good at both.
So this one is called Sounding the Alarm. Today is a day I show loving recognition to my personal growth and the sparks of ignition. When I was birthed into physicality, there was a fuel inside me, a divine vitality. It directed my essence as an eternal guide, one I had forgotten, but within me did reside. It weathered the storm of social conditioning by following my central North Star positioning. This storm was long, dark, and rough, internal frictions of chaos until my truth shouted enough. This voice had drawn in oxygen through the seawater and rain, sparking that forgotten fire within a deeply hidden domain. I directed attention inward and unraveled previous wrappings of expectations and attachments that had concealed my truth in trappings. These coverings are a part of me, catalysts to my evolution. I honor and respect them as harbingers to divine elocution.
Thank you. That's great. Can I just say, Samantha, I think you're doing really well with your poems, and I'm glad you've been having a spiritual deep dive, because it's bringing up stuff. That's fantastic. And
It has been profound.
Yeah. So keep at it. Right. I think I'm going to finish my bit with a quote from Plato, the philosopher, because Plato founded the academy in Athens. And Plutarch saw himself as working in that tradition. Plutarch was an intellectual who really respected Plato's legacy. And he mentions him often in his writings. And he saw himself as a philosopher in that tradition. I mean, technically, he's called a Neoplatonist. But Plato was also a master of literature. And not many people know this, but his first love in life was theatre. A bit like me, when he was a young man, he wanted to be a playwright. And because, of course, in Athens, they just invented the theatre at the festival of Dionysus or Bacchus. So you had the great tragedies being written by Aeschylus and Euripides and others, Sophocles. And Plato would have watched all these on the stage being performed, and he wanted to do something similar. Because what was so amazing about these theatre performances were the gods were coming alive on stage and acting. They were there, and they were interacting with the heroes of old. In Prometheus Bound, which is a great play by Aeschylus, it tells the story of how Prometheus had dared to defy Zeus to save humanity. Humanity was in danger of being destroyed by Zeus, and Prometheus protected us. It also tells us that Prometheus created us. It was Prometheus, the Athenians believed, that first fashioned us out of clay, and Athena, the goddess of Athens, breathed into us and gave us spirit. So that's the Athenian belief on the creation of man. And Zeus came along later as sort of angry god who didn't like humans. He was jealous of us. He thought we were a nuisance. But Prometheus smuggled fire down to us to protect us because we were, in danger of dying. And so the Athenians loved Prometheus. He was then chained to a cave, to a stone in the Caucasus mountain. And an eagle came and pecked at his liver every day. And it grew overnight, and then it pecked again. This was a punishment from Father Zeus. Thank you, Zeus, Until finally he was set free by Hercules, the great god, the hero. But Aeschylus's play tells this story from Prometheus's point of view. And it was kind of heresy, because he makes out that Zeus is not the nice god we all think of, just. He was a bit of a psychotic, kind of father figure. Anyway, Plato watched these plays in awe. And I discovered something out just in this last couple of weeks I didn't know before, which I think is really interesting. Every year in Athens, there was a race in honor of Prometheus. And it was run with torches at night. And it was like a relay race. So you ran 100 meters and passed the torch on to the next guy, and so on. I think women ran it as well. And it went all the way around Athens, this torchlight race at night, and came back. And it started and ended at the altar of Prometheus, which was in the grounds of the academy, where Plato had founded his school, his academy. The academy was a grove of trees just outside the walls of Athens in the countryside, like a little forest. And in that, Plato had founded his temple to the Muses and the academy, which was the first ever university in the Western world. And I find that really interesting, that the race to Prometheus started and ended in the academy. And I think we should be like Prometheans, if you want. Anyone that wants to restart the Delphic Games, we're not going to get this done without a fight, because all the kind of people that hate learning, hate philosophy, hate the arts, they just peddle that, no, we want more wars, more fighting, more gizmos, No, we don't. We want more wisdom. So anyway, this is my reading from Plato's text called the Phaedrus. And it's really, you'll see why I've chosen this one. Socrates said, well, did we not say that love is a sort of madness? Phaedrus. Yes, Socrates. And that there are two kinds of madness, one resulting from human ailments, and the other from a divine disturbance of our conventions of conduct. Phaedrus. Quite so. Socrates. And in the divine kind, we distinguished 4 types, ascribing them to 4 gods. The inspirations of the prophet to Apollo, that of the mystic to Dionysus, that of the poet to the muses, and a 4th type, which we declared to be the highest, the madness of the lover, to Aphrodite and Eros. Moreover, we painted after a fashion a picture of the lover's experience, in which perhaps we attained some degree of truth, though we may well have sometimes gone astray. The blend resulting in a discourse which had some claim to plausibility, or shall we say a mythical hymn of praise in due religious language, a festival celebration of my master and yours too, Phaedrus, that god of love, who watches over the young and the fair. Phaedrus, it certainly gave me great pleasure to listen to it. And if you want to know what happens next, you have to read the Phaedrus. It's one of Plato's great dialogues. And you can see he wrote these things like mini plays. He never stopped being a dramatist. And so he wrote philosophy in play form with Socrates as the main character. And I have been trying to find out, is there a theatre company anywhere in the world that acts out the Plato's dialogues as plays? So I'll give you that as a little, quest. See if you can find, Samantha, if there's any companies in America, any theatre companies doing Plato's dialogues on the stage, or in India, or Italy, or Scotland, because I think they should come and perform at the Delphic Games. I think it would be wonderful to have a performance of the Phaedrus or something as an opening for the Delphic Games. And I'm sure, I mean, Plato himself went to Delphi, and we know something. His student, Aristotle, was invited by the Delphic authorities who ran the whole games and everything, and the oracle, because there was a fatal fire in Delphi. And all the archives and the library of Delphi burned down. It was an absolute tragedy. And they invited Aristotle in to come and sift among the rubble, look through the burned parchments, and try and reconstruct what had been in the library. Can you imagine that as a job? And they invited Aristotle because they knew he was a scholar, he was a lover of learning, he was a bookworm, and he was Plato's greatest student. But what I haven't been able to find out is, did Aristotle reconstruct the contents, and were they published? Where are they? I think they've burned down as well when the museum in Alexandria burned down. So there's another little quest. Anyone can find Aristotle's lost work on Delphi's library, let us know, Okay, so look, I think let's just have one final go round, just say farewell, and any comments you've got. What are you going to do to get the Delphic Games going again? And we'll be meeting again in 2 months' time, so spread the word, invite friends, let's try and get Mandy doing some poems next time, Samantha. Okay, so Rosalba, just say a farewell, any last words?
You told about Plutarch. I love Plutarch because he was very sensitive about animals, and I am an activist for animals, so my heart beat over there. And I found a note by Plutarch that said, "It is certainly not lions and wolves that we eat out of self-defense, On the contrary, we ignore these and slaughter harmless, tame creatures without stings or teeth to harm us, creatures that, I swear, nature appears to have produced for the sake of their beauty and grace. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think he was a great lover of animals, and his writings on animals are quite
Yes.
famous.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, he was a Pythagorean as well as a Platonist who believed in the soul, and animals too have a right to exist. They,
And I too, I believe too.
yeah,
Yes.
good. Thank you. Kacheni, any last words? Any final farewell thoughts?
Well, it was great to be a part of this series of Delphic lecture. I mean, we could hear other cultural aspect as well as poems. So that was very nice to hear.
Thank you. I don't know if you realize, any of you, but it's the 27th year of the return of the Delphic Games, and they're being celebrated in India over the next 7 days in a variety of Indian states. And my colleagues involved on the commission of the Delphic Games have organized with an Indian group. It's starting tomorrow in Rajasthan, and they've got performances, dancing, music. You can listen in on YouTube or Zoom. And each day it's going to a different province. So like it's in Rajasthan, it's in Uttar Pradesh or whatever. So in India, there's a strong Delphic Games group set up. So I'll send you the links to everyone on this call, right?
Thank you.
Kacheni, and you can listen in and see what's going on, What's the name of the province or department you live in?
Madhya Pradesh, Central
Right.
India.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything happening, but it's all on Zoom, so you can listen in wherever you're based. But apparently it's quite popular in India, the Delphic Games idea. And there's a lot of arts, a lot of love of the arts in India, dancing, music. And in India, that art is sacred. It's not just for profit or a commercial thing. It's an expression of the soul. Yeah. And I learned something when I was in India. I was told by a friend that in the theaters in India, certainly in the ancient times, they would always have a fire burning on the stage, lit during the entire performance, because that was Shiva, that was God, the transcendental Jyoti Linga, which stands for the cosmic fire that is bigger than all the other gods put together. And that was Shiva's presence during the play. And I discovered they did the same in Greece. When the Greek plays played, they had a fire burning as well, as a symbolic thing. So, these art things, they're quite important. Yeah. Great. Okay, Morag, farewell thoughts from you from Scotland.
Hiya. Yeah, Scotland's had such a rich history in all things art. It's like dating, as far back as you like. It's like, go back in history, you'll find art and druids and poetry and philosophy and all sorts of things. It's like, even in our ancient stones, it's like you'll find carved Celtic artwork. Glasgow has the UNESCO world status for music, and it's also got the oldest music hall in the world that is still going to this day. There's still performances going on there. It's like even today. So yeah, it's like, I'm really proud to get those feelers out there. It's like, to the ones that I know in Scotland, it's like to be a part of this. It's like dancers, singers, get some drummers involved.
Yeah.
It's like, hearing the bothering earlier on is like,
yeah. Look, if you can, if you want, get some of them to make a little film like Rosalba did. Let's get some Scottish music groups and drummers doing a film, and then we can play that film. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
yeah, and also there is the prospect of having the Delphic Games come to different countries. They don't have to always be in Delphi. Now they move about. So they've taken part in the Philippines, or there was a games took place in South Africa. They can move around like the Olympics. So, you know, we could make a bid that Scotland, when it gets independence, could host the Delphic Games for the world. I would certainly back that. But let's start the ball rolling by just getting some visionary artists to come along to this is a think tank for the
Well,
Delphic.
at the moment, Scotland's just launched a new musical about Lady Macbeth. From Shakespeare play. It's called Lady M.
Oh, really?
The new musical. There's already clips of it on YouTube. Check it out. It's called
Okay.
Lady M, the Scottish musical. And the students of the RCS, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, wrote a fantastic piece called Shakespearean Opera, where they took lots of different Shakespearean plays and created the one opera out of about, I think it was 10 of them.
Okay.
So they took snippets of all different forms of Shakespearean plays and created this one big opera, and they also put modern pieces into it as well. It was brilliant. I went to see it live. So we could maybe approach the students. It's like there for your Plato idea.
Yeah, no, that would be good actually. The Conservatoire could do it. Yeah, I acted in Macbeth at grammar school. It was an all-boys school, so I had a female part. I played Lady Macduff, who's killed by. So I don't like Lady Macbeth. She's my least favorite woman. She was a real horrible woman. She killed me off, and but I enjoyed acting, and I loved the adventure of acting on stage. It was brilliant, and I had an amazing.
It's
like
still
a medieval
known as the
dress.
accursed play. They don't actually say Macbeth in any theatre in Scotland. They will not say the actual word Macbeth inside a theatre. They'll refer to it as the Scottish play.
Oh,
Because
right.
so many bad things happen around Macbeth. It's known as the cursed play. So they'll only ever refer to it inside the theatre as the Scottish play. Outside you can call it Macbeth all you like, but inside the theatre or anywhere in the theatre itself, it's known as the Scottish play.
I didn't know that. That's interesting because he wrote it after King James had become King of England as well as Scotland. And James was afraid of witches, as we all know. He had a deep fear of the occult, and he didn't understand Druids. Poor old James. He didn't realize that there's a good kind of occultism. There's a white magic as well as a dark magic, and Queen Elizabeth did, who was Shakespeare's original patron. You know, she made black magic illegal. Like you can't use magic to kill somebody or harm them, but white magic was legal in England, and that's where Shakespeare wrote, Midsummer Night's Dream and all that. He was writing about white magic, which is permissible under Elizabethan law. But James lacked he didn't understand that. And I think what Shakespeare was doing in Macbeth was trying to tell him subtly, about these things. Because, of course, the witches in Macbeth are important. But I think underlying Shakespeare, there's a sort of a stream of white magic at work, which you see in The Tempest and all that. But anyway, there is a book, if anyone's interested, called Shakespeare's Mind by a scholar called Nuttall, who goes into all this. And Ted Hughes, great poet of English origin, wrote a book called Shakespeare and the Goddess. It was the last book he wrote about the goddess in Shakespeare who turns up. But in Macbeth, she's not doing very well, I think. So anyway, thank you so much. Right, now, final thoughts. Samantha, you've got to go. We're all about to go. Let's just last thoughts from Samantha and then we'll close.
Just an absolute pleasure to share space and share our creativity. I think it's so important to speak our uniqueness and especially in a safe space. And so I love that that is really what you're working towards creating, Thomas. I think is a safe space for all creatives to come together and share their what is speaking out from inside. And that's a beautiful thing. So the more we can grow that, I think the happier and more peaceful societies will be. So
Right.
thank
Well,
you for your
thank you
work.
so much. Yes. Okay, with those wise words from Samantha, we'll all say thank you to everyone for taking part. See you in 2 months' time. It's always on the 14th, and it's like alternate months, because in the one in between, we have a boring business meeting, which you won't want to be bothered with, fundraising and all that nonsense. But this one is for the artists, right? And okay, lots of love. And if I don't see you again, happy Christmas.
Thank you for the invitation,
Oh, you're
Thomas.
welcome. And
Thank
I will be organizing a Druid event on the 21st of December to celebrate the solstice. I'll send out an invite about that.
21st?
On the solstice itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have a sort of Druid gathering online. But don't tell King James if you see him, all right?
Okay.
Okay. Ciao.
Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.